In February 2010, Google made one of the most catastrophic privacy blunders in tech history when it launched Google Buzz, a social networking service that automatically harvested users' private Gmail contacts and publicly exposed their communication patterns without explicit consent. Within hours of its release, users discovered that Buzz had created public follower lists based on their most frequently emailed and chatted contacts, revealing intimate details about personal relationships, business connections, and private communications to anyone who visited their Google profiles. The backlash was immediate and severe, with users reporting that the service had exposed sensitive information, including extramarital affairs, confidential business relationships, and personal connections that people had deliberately kept private. Google Buzz represents perhaps the most tone-deaf approach to social networking ever attempted by a major tech company, demonstrating how even the world's most sophisticated technology corporation could completely misunderstand user privacy expectations and social dynamics. Google's motivation for creating Buzz stemmed from mounting anxiety about Facebook's explosive growth and the social web's potential threat to search advertising revenue. By 2009, Facebook had reached 350 million users and was becoming a significant destination for content sharing and discovery, activities that traditionally drove traffic to Google search. Larry Page, who would soon return as CEO, had identified social networking as an existential threat to Google's business model, arguing that if people discovered content through social recommendations rather than search queries, Google's advertising empire could face serious erosion. The company had already attempted to enter social networking with Orkut in 2004, but the platform had failed to gain meaningful traction in the United States, despite some success in Brazil and India. Google's leadership believed they needed a social product that could leverage their existing user base of hundreds of millions of Gmail users, and Buzz seemed like the perfect Trojan horse to instantly create a massive social network by building on top of email relationships. The fundamental design flaw in Google Buzz was its assumption that email frequency equaled social connection preference, leading to an algorithm that automatically determined who users should follow and who should follow them based on Gmail and Google Chat activity. When users first logged into Gmail after Buzz launched, they found themselves automatically enrolled in the social network with pre-populated follower and following lists that reflected their most active email correspondents and chat partners. These lists were publicly visible by default on users' Google profiles, meaning that anyone could visit a person's profile and see exactly who they communicated with most frequently via email and chat. The system also automatically shared users' Google Reader activity, Picasa photos, and other Google service interactions within the Buzz stream, creating a comprehensive digital footprint that many users had no idea they were broadcasting. Google product manager Todd Jackson later admitted that the team was so focused on solving the cold start problem of social networks that they prioritized convenience over privacy, making algorithmic assumptions about user relationships that proved disastrously wrong. The privacy violations became apparent within hours as users discovered their most sensitive relationships had been exposed to public scrutiny. A Harvard Business School student reported that Buzz revealed she had been communicating frequently with a teaching assistant, potentially suggesting an inappropriate relationship that could have damaged both their careers. Divorce attorneys found that estranged spouses could easily discover who their former partners were communicating with most frequently by simply visiting their Google profiles. Business professionals discovered that confidential client relationships and competitive intelligence gathering had been exposed through their follower lists, potentially violating non-disclosure agreements and ethical guidelines. Women in abusive relationships reported that Buzz had revealed their communications with domestic violence counselors and support networks, creating genuine safety risks. The Electronic Frontier Foundation documented dozens of cases where Buzz's automatic relationship mapping had created professional, personal, and even physical dangers for users who had never consented to sharing this information. Google's initial response to the privacy backlash demonstrated a profound misunderstanding of the severity of the situation, with executives initially defending the product's design choices and making only minor adjustments to privacy settings. On February 13, 2010, just 3 days after launch, Google made some Google profiles private by default and added options to hide follower lists. But these changes required users to actively seek out and modify settings that many didn't even know existed. The company's blog post announcing these changes used language that minimized the privacy concerns, describing them as adjustments, rather than acknowledging the fundamental violations of user privacy expectations. Google Buzz product manager Todd Jackson wrote that they had heard from people who are concerned about privacy as if the concerns were merely opinions rather than legitimate grievances about unauthorized data disclosure. This tone-deaf response amplified user anger and convinced many privacy advocates that Google had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of privacy and consent in digital communications. The legal consequences materialized quickly as privacy advocates and affected users organized to hold Google accountable through class action litigation. In March 2010, just 1 month after Buzz's launch, attorneys filed the first class action lawsuit, alleging violations of federal wiretapping laws, California privacy statutes, and computer fraud regulations. The lawsuit argued that Google had accessed and disclosed private communication patterns without proper consent, essentially conducting surveillance on users' personal relationships and then broadcasting the results publicly. Legal experts noted that Google's actions potentially violated the Electronic Communications Privacy Act because the company had accessed and disclosed metadata about private communications without user authorization. The case gained momentum as more users came forward with documented harms, including professional damage, relationship problems, and safety concerns directly attributable to Buzz's privacy violations. The technical architecture underlying Google Buzz revealed a company-wide philosophy that prioritized data integration and algorithmic automation over user agency and privacy protection. Google had built Buzz on top of their existing infrastructure for Gmail, Google Chat, Google Reader, and Picasa, allowing the service to instantly access years of user communication patterns and behavioral data across multiple platforms. The system used machine learning algorithms to analyze email frequency, response patterns, and chat activity to determine relationship strength and automatically configure social connections. This approach reflected Google's broader belief that algorithmic intelligence could make better decisions about user preferences than users themselves, a philosophy that worked well for search relevance but proved catastrophic for social relationships. The company had essentially applied search engine thinking to social networking, treating human relationships as data points to be optimized rather than personal choices to be respected. Google's attempts to salvage Buzz through iterative improvements and privacy enhancements failed to address the fundamental trust damage caused by the initial privacy violations. In April 2010, the company introduced more granular privacy controls and made follower lists private by default for new users, but these changes couldn't undo the months of unwanted exposure that existing users had already experienced. Google also added the ability to completely disable Buzz, but the option was buried deep in Gmail settings and required multiple steps to complete, leading critics to argue that the company was still prioritizing engagement over user autonomy. Despite these modifications, Buzz never recovered from its privacy scandal reputation, and user engagement remained minimal compared to Facebook and Twitter. The service became a cautionary tale about the importance of privacy by design thinking, demonstrating that retroactive privacy fixes cannot repair the damage caused by fundamentally flawed privacy assumptions. The broader implications of the Google Buzz failure extended far beyond one failed product, influencing privacy regulation, corporate practices, and public awareness about digital privacy rights. In March 2011, Google agreed to a settlement with the Federal Trade Commission that required the company to implement comprehensive privacy audits for the next 20 years, marking one of the first major regulatory consequences for a tech company's privacy practices. The settlement required Google to obtain explicit user consent before sharing personal information in ways that conflicted with its privacy policies, essentially codifying the principle that companies cannot unilaterally redefine privacy expectations through product updates. Privacy advocates credited the Buzz backlash with raising public awareness about the risks of automatic data sharing and the importance of explicit consent in digital services. The incident also influenced the development of privacy regulations, including the California Consumer Privacy Act and the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, both of which emphasize user control and explicit consent for data processing. The Google Buzz debacle ultimately cost the company an estimated $8.5 million in legal settlements, countless hours of engineering resources, and immeasurable damage to its reputation for trustworthy data handling. In October 2011, Google officially announced that Buzz would be discontinued, citing low user engagement and the company's focus on Google+ as its primary social networking initiative. The final user statistics revealed that despite being automatically activated for all Gmail users, Buzz never achieved meaningful engagement levels, with most users either actively disabling the service or simply ignoring it entirely. Internal Google documents later revealed that the Buzz team had been aware of potential privacy concerns before launch, but had decided to proceed anyway, believing that the benefits of instant social graph creation would outweigh user privacy objections. The failure taught Google and the broader tech industry that social networking requires fundamentally different approaches to user consent and privacy than search or email services, and that assumptions about user behavior based on one digital context cannot be safely applied to another. Google Buzz remains a landmark case study in privacy design, demonstrating how even the most technically sophisticated companies can create products that fundamentally misunderstand human social dynamics and privacy expectations.